Book 10 serves as a coda to the Republic, addressing three seemingly disparate topics that actually complete the dialogue's argument. First, Plato returns to the critique of poetry and imitative art that he began in Books 2 and 3. Now having developed the theory of forms, he can explain more fully why poetry must be excluded from the ideal city. The argument is this: imitative art is thrice removed from truth. Consider a bed. First, there's the form of bed, the eternal, perfect idea of what a bed is, created, in some sense, by God. Second, there's the physical bed made by the carpenter, a copy of the form. Third, there's the painting of a bed made by the artist, a copy of the copy. The painter doesn't even need to know how beds are made or used. He just reproduces appearances. He creates images that look like things, but lack the reality. And viewers who don't know better might think they're learning about beds by looking at paintings when they're actually moving further from truth. This applies to all imitative poetry and drama. Homer depicts warriors, but he never was a warrior. He depicts statesmen, but he never governed. His work is appearance twice removed from reality. And yet readers think Homer teaches them about courage, wisdom, and virtue. They're learning from shadows. Even more problematically, poetry appeals to the emotional part of the soul rather than the rational part. Tragic poetry makes us identify with characters' grief, passion, and suffering. We exercise the emotional parts of our souls, strengthening them when we should be strengthening reason's control. When we watch tragedy, we permit ourselves emotions we'd suppress in real life. We weep over fictional sufferings when weeping over our own would be shameful. This emotional indulgence weakens rational control. For guardians who need reason firmly in command, this is dangerous. Comedy does something similar. We laugh at jokes and behaviors that we'd find shameful in ourselves. By identifying with shameful characters and laughing at shameful acts, we gradually become more shameful ourselves. Plato acknowledges the seductive power of poetry. Even he feels it. But poetry must be examined by reason, not simply enjoyed. And if poetry can't defend itself rationally, can't show that it leads to truth and virtue rather than away from them, it must be excluded from the ideal city. There's deep irony here. The Republic itself is magnificent literature. Plato is one of the greatest literary artists in Western civilization. The cave allegory is vivid imagery. The entire dialogue is dramatic and engaging. Yet Plato criticizes poetry and imitation. Some scholars see this as Plato acknowledging the tension between philosophy and poetry, reason and emotion, truth and beauty. He recognizes poetry's power, but insists it must be subordinated to philosophy. Others see it as Plato distinguishing between poetry that serves truth, like his own philosophical dialogues, and poetry that merely entertains or inflames emotions. Second, Plato argues for the immortality of the soul. It seems like a digression, but it's actually crucial to the dialogue's argument about justice. The argument is complex, but the basic idea is this: each thing is destroyed by its own specific evil or vice. The body's evil is disease, which destroys it. Wood's evil is rot, which destroys it. Iron's evil is rust, which destroys it. What's the soul's evil? Injustice, cowardice, ignorance, the vices that make a soul bad. But do these destroy the soul in the way disease destroys the body? We see unjust people living to old age. Injustice doesn't kill the soul in the way disease kills the body. If the soul's own proper evil does not destroy it, and nothing else can destroy it, since by definition only a thing's own evil can destroy it, then the soul must be immortal. It cannot be destroyed by injustice or anything else.
Why does this matter? Because it means justice and injustice have consequences beyond this life. The just person who suffers in this life isn't ultimately harmed. The unjust person who prospers in this life hasn't ultimately escaped consequences. This leads to the third section of Book 10, the myth of which Socrates presents as an account of the afterlife. Was a warrior who died in battle. After 10 days, his body hadn't decayed. He was placed on a funeral pyre, but before it was lit, he revived and told what he'd seen. He described a place of judgment where souls arrive after death. Just souls are sent upward to heaven, where they receive rewards for their justice, 1,000 years of joy for every year they live justly. Unjust souls are sent downward to punishment, 1,000 years of suffering for every year they lived unjustly. After their time in reward or punishment, souls gather to choose their next lives. They're shown many possible lives, humans of various types, animals of various species. Each soul must choose. Some choose wisely. A soul that had lived justly and gained wisdom chooses carefully, seeking a good life suited to philosophy and virtue. Others choose foolishly. One soul that had been rewarded in heaven but learned nothing, had been just only by habit, not understanding, chooses the life of a tyrant, thinking it will bring pleasure and power. Only after choosing does this soul realize what it's chosen, a life of eating one's own children and other horrors. It had been dazzled by appearance, not understanding reality. Orpheus's soul, remembering how it died at the hands of women, chooses to be a swan. Agamemnon's soul, remembering its murder, chooses to be an eagle. Ajax's soul, remembering its defeat, chooses to be a lion. But some souls choose remarkably well. The soul of Odysseus, exhausted by ambition and striving, chooses the life of a private citizen who minds his own business, a life of philosophical contemplation rather than worldly achievement.
After choosing, souls drink from the river of forgetfulness and are born into their new lives, remembering nothing of their choice or the afterlife. The myth reinforces several themes. First, justice and injustice have ultimate consequences. You can't escape by dying. There's judgment and reward or punishment beyond this life. Second, the choices we make shape our souls for eternity. Third, true wisdom is recognizing what's genuinely good versus what merely appears good. The soul that chooses tyranny chose appearance over reality. But Plato's purpose in ending with a myth is significant. He's moved beyond arguments to imagination. The myth isn't meant to be literally true. It's a story, explicitly called a myth. But it conveys truths that pure argument can't fully capture. It suggests that justice isn't just about this life or this city. It's about the soul's ultimate condition. The philosophical life, the examined life, the life of seeking truth and practicing virtue, has cosmic significance. How we live matters not just socially or psychologically, but metaphysically. The Republic ends with Socrates' final exhortation. We shall hold always to the upward way and pursue justice with wisdom in every way, that we may be dear to ourselves and to the gods, both while we remain here and when we receive our rewards, like victors in the games collecting prizes. Live justly, seek wisdom, order your soul properly, and you'll fare well both in this life and in whatever comes after. The just person, even if they suffer every external evil, maintains internal harmony and will ultimately be rewarded. The unjust person,
even if they prosper in every external way, suffers internal disorder and will ultimately face consequences. This is the final answer to Thrasymachus. Justice is its own reward because it's health of the soul, which is the most valuable thing. And if there's an afterlife, justice brings eternal reward, while injustice brings eternal punishment. Either way, you should be just.